Welcome to the Schema Concept section. In this section, we will be expanding into a foundation concept of GraphQL schemas. We will revisit what schemas are, the vital role they play within GraphQL, and how we can utilize schemas to take our current knowledge to the next level. Now that we're in sync, let's learn about schemas. In this section, we will be looking into concepts such as representing schemas, generating schemas, introspection, remote schemas, schema stitching, and the fairly new schema transforms. Let's go ahead and start learning about schema and its related concepts. You have already noticed by now, schemas are a vital building block of GraphQL. Schemas allow us to describe the objects we will be working with. A schema can contain multiple objects which also have the ability to be nested. In order to utilize these schemas, we need to be able to represent them. When it comes to representing schemas, we have choices. The first one we are already familiar with, schema definition language. This is not the first encounter we have with SDL, as we have represented a schema via SDL when we first built our Apollo server. SDL is also the most common way to represent a schema. Introspection is another schema representation method. Introspection allows us to inquire about the queries available on our server. This method not only can be utilized to find out the queries available on our server, but also to find out further details about other objects as well. GraphQL.js provides us two very important capabilities: build a type schema, serve queries against the type schema. Aside from providing us with the described abilities above, GraphQL.js is a reference implementation of the GraphQL spec. It is also a library of useful tools for building servers, clients, and tools for GraphQL. There are a few approaches and techniques when it comes to generating schemas. We can also take advantage of GraphQL library to aid us in the process. A schema is a requirement to understand the data to be utilized. The technique that we utilized when building our Apollo server involved type defs and resolvers. That type of approach is commonly used and also known as schema first. When generating a schema, you can utilize the make executable schema from the GraphQL tools library. If you're wondering if we use this method to generate the schema in our previous code, you are incorrect. While a good guess, we took an alternate technique that yielded the same results. When generating a schema, the expected parameters are type definitions and resolvers. Without these, you cannot proceed to generate a schema. When it comes to the approaches available for generating schemas, we have a couple that are commonly utilized. Schema first. You generate the schema based on a previously known structure, and then SQL to GraphQL. This approach generates the schema dynamically from an existing structure in a database. Start by navigating to the code of the samples that we have provided, section 2.3, and the index.js file. Let's open it, and then do the same for section 3. Let's place them side by side, on the right being section 3 file, and on the left, the 2.3 file. This will allow us to see the differences side by side. The first one that we can visibly see is on the right side, the make executable schema constant line. Notice that that did not exist in our previous version. Why? Because we were taking a different path and approach that we had mentioned previously. Now let's keep on looking for other differences. We find the schema constant that was not defined in the other side for the code. It still leverages the type defs and resolvers, leading us into the next line that, as you notice, is commented out here. We are using now the variable that we have specified as schema. Let's close all our code right now and start verifying that this code actually works. So let's open our command line statements, and you can do it side by side with me and run the commands. Let's start with navigating to the desktop folder, followed by installing npm to make sure that we do have npm installed. This will lead us, once it's completing, to the section 3 folder. We will have to install the other packages, Apollo server, GraphQL, GraphQL tools as well. And last, we will need to run the node index.js so that it can start the server for our Apollo server itself. We are receiving a link that we should navigate to, so let's copy it and open our browser, in this case, Firefox. Let's paste the link and navigate towards it and start creating a query. We're going to start typing schema, which we knew that was called books, which exists. Let's execute it, and we get a, rightfully so, an error message because we did not specify any fields. So let's go ahead and do that now. Let's try a title, and hopefully that works, which was successful. Now let's try getting the author. And here we go. Let's execute it once more. Introspection is another concept that serves as a building block, allowing and leading us into other concepts, such as remote schemas, stitching, and transformations. Let's look into how introspections are part of this process. The definition of introspection. Introspection is a means by which you can ask about the queries being supported on the Apollo server. We have utilized in the simplest of manners by building queries and inquiring about the contents of that schema before. The reason it works out of the box is because GraphQL builds that system automatically for you. The system is called Introspection System. This also means that GraphQL is introspective by nature. We have defined what introspection is. I can hear in our heads a question resonating. How can we start introspecting? This is accomplished by typing in the playground 2 underscores. Results will start appearing as we type. We should introspect because we can learn about the schemas and related objects along with their content and structures. Another way of looking at the importance of introspection is because we can reverse engineer a schema from a remote server. Since you have paid attention throughout the video, you have probably noticed introspection is building into another schema concept. Care to guess which schema concept that is? Before you provide the answer, let's take a quick look at a demo about introspecting. Here we are in the playground. Let's start introspecting our schema. So for that effect, we're going to clean up any existing query there, and we're going to start, as mentioned before, typing in the brackets along with the double underscores. We quickly get the schema, and then we start looking at all the possibilities listed under the schema. For this case, an example, let's try creating a query type by accessing the name field and the kind, followed by the description. Once we have all that, let's execute the query to see what the results are. We get the name and kind description objects as listed there. Let's try a different type of query and start creating a mutation type to see if we have any mutations on the server. So we follow the same process as before to get the same fields to see if there's anything in there. Should there be, we should get a result indicating so. Let's execute the query and we get null, which is correct. We do not have any mutations. Let's see if we have any directives. Following the same steps, we get the name, the kind, and the description so that we can also add a location and execute the query. And we do get some data. Notice that we get some additional description that has been listed in. We'll navigate down there, and this is a quick example of how useful introspection can be.